Thanks everybody for coming today. I appreciate it. First want to, of course, thank Clark Hinsdale, Krista Alexander, Cheryl DeVos, and Senator Anthony Polina for joining me today. What I'm here today to talk to you about is both the experience that I bring to the office of Lieutenant Governor in terms of bringing people into the process. If you look at the issues I've helped shepherd through over the years, it's really been an effort that succeeded because Vermonters throughout the state participate in the process in greater numbers. And it's not always about the political wins in the building creating things happening, but actually what the people of the state of Vermont want. And one of the opportunities I see as Lieutenant Governor is to really take that organizing to another level, where you serve as the presiding officer over the Senate, but you actually have time both before and after that most days to bring people into the process or to travel the state and engage citizens around key important issues. And so this office, which some people have called a do-nothing office, actually is an office that has real potential to do a lot for the state of Vermont. Today, I'm here to reveal one of the ways that I plan to do that, and that is that serving as your next Lieutenant Governor, I plan to put together a few different task forces on critical issues facing Vermont. And one of my key issues for the state is our rural economy and all the opportunities that present themselves throughout the state from our diversified agriculture sector, our forestry sector, but also things like broadband and community renewable energy. So what I plan to do is bring together leaders in each of those sectors to develop a task force to really look at what are the next opportunities for our state, whether it's how we're going to expand broadband to our rural parts of the state, helping farmers to be able to market their products, or helping draw people to Vermont who want to live in Vermont but also need to make a living. And if they can create software businesses out of their homes because they have good broadband, then they can repopulate some of our rural areas and really rebuild some of our communities. So if we bring farmers, renewable energy folks, forestry experts, and broadband type experts together, we can come up with ideas that are going to be propelled into action here at the State House. So today joining me are folks that have been in the agricultural field in particular to talk about this upcoming task force, which will again be enacted if I become Lieutenant Governor, and speak to my experience as a farmer as well as the ideas that we can have moving forward.
So anyway, I'm really glad to be here with David Zuckerman, who I've worked with and known for about 20 years now. And for me and agriculture, this is a very exciting race, a very exciting opportunity for us to have somebody representing all Vermonters in the State House who has a career in agriculture that started with the incubator facilities at the Intervale, moving on to conserved land, owned land in Heinsberg, developing a business, developing a payroll, marketing plans, and all the things that are essential to run any small business. And to have someone who's been through that whole process and whose livelihood depends not on politics, but on the soil that we share, I think is a real opportunity for people in Vermont, because I've seen Dave work on, seen him work on current use, tax issues, sales tax issues, the funding of conservation, the funding of our grant programs to get young entrepreneurs onto land. And we're seeing an amazing result from all of this work. Vermont is leading the nation in farmers markets and the whole local food movement, little Vermont. But there's so much more opportunity because we still import most of our food in this state, and we need to grow more of it here to strengthen our local economies and communities. So I'm excited to be working with farmers kind of across the spectrum, organic farmers, conventional farmers, small farmers and large farmers, because together we're all important as the fabric of agriculture in this country. So I'm just heartily endorsed and am very, very pleased to have my friend and Chittenden County neighbor and farmer, Dave Zuckerman, running for this important office. And I think as our 31st state senator, he'll be in a position to do all of us a lot of good, but bringing that knowledge of agriculture from all of his years of experience is very, very important to those of us who go out and do that every day.
I'm Krista Alexander, and I'm co-owner of Jericho Settlers Farm in Jericho and Richmond. My husband and I farm 200 acres where we produce grass-based meats and eggs and certified organic vegetables. I'm also the president of the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association, but today I'm speaking more in my capacity as a farmer and friend of David Zuckerman, and I'm thrilled for his candidacy for Lieutenant Governor, because I know David will bring passion and dedication to the issues that affect our rural communities. I've known David for over a decade in our farming world, and know the dedication and hard work he brings to his own farm. And I know he will bring that to the issues that affect rural economies throughout the state. One of the things that we've really strived to do at our farm is utilize renewable energy sources. That's important for the viability of our farm. We have solar installed for electrical generation, and we use biomass fuels for heat generation, as well as heat recovery systems and efficiencies built into our cooling systems. All of this technology is essential to the viability and long-term sustainability of our farm, and it's where many of our farms, if they're not already there, are going to be moving towards in the future. And having someone who's really dedicated and knows what needs to happen in this area is going to be important for our communities in the future. Another thing that we don't do a ton of at our farm, but we work with a lot of small businesses, is in value-added processing. So a lot of our meats and vegetables go into other small businesses in our area that are taking them the next step and creating another product out of those raw materials and that raw food. And there's so much potential in this market. It's something, as we started growing more and more animals for meat production, we were always looking for how can we make a great sausage or a dry-cured salami or something else. And we've made some great strides in the state in terms of the processing facilities that are available, but there's still just so much more potential there. And I really look forward to David bringing more attention to that area and moving us forward in that area as well. And lastly, when I think about how our farm works in the day-to-day world, the one thing that we rely on every day is reliable cell service and internet connection. We could not run our farm without it. Not only in connecting with our consumers and our customers, but also my workforce and the people who are part of my community and making the farm operate. And so knowing how much how many areas within the state still do not have reliable service, it seems difficult to understand, like, how can those businesses reliably function in today's world. So I think the attention brought to that area is going to really expand the profitability and the viability of the small businesses throughout the state. So I know David will bring hard work, detailed research, and dedication to these issues. He really is a great candidate for taking our rural economy and our rural communities the next step. And I can't wait till he's Lieutenant Governor.
My name is Cheryl DeVos, and as you just heard, I'm from Kimblebrook Farm. My husband and I own a dairy farm in North Ferrisburg, Vermont, and we also operate our own milk bottling plant in Heinsberg. And I'm really happy and excited to be here today to support David's campaign to become Lieutenant Governor. And I'm here just to talk about a little bit about programs that we've used over the years and that I feel really are important to Vermont farmers and need to remain, and we need to build on those programs in the future. So just a little history. My husband's family has been farming in North Ferrisburg, Vermont since 1968. In 2005, we turned that conventional dairy into an organic dairy. And in 2000, I think I said 2008. In 2005, we turned it into an organic dairy. In 2008, we started thinking about becoming, processing our own milk, basically, doing something that not a lot of dairy farmers do in the state right now. In fact, I think right now, there's more than us. There used to be 4. I think there's 5 or 6 places that actually process their own milk in the state. So instead of going backwards, we're actually going ahead with milk processing plants again. So in 2008, with the help of Vermont Farm Viability Program, we started to work on how to come up with a business plan and figure out how to go from just being a dairy farm to actually bottling our own milk. And we basically worked on that so we started in 2008. In 2012, we actually were in business bottling our own milk. Lots of things behind that. We have used slow money as a foundation for, bringing in working capital for our business. And just lately, we've also used some of these programs like Farm to Plate, which is connected to Vermont Sustainable Job Fund, and we enlisted a consultant through them. It's really hard to to go from a mindset of just ag to figuring out how to take your product out on the streets, market it, sell it, distribute it, bring it out of the state of Vermont, keep it, probably 50% of our product stays in the state of Vermont. 50% is going out into New England, which used to be, or still is, the milk shed of Vermont. So I'm really hoping that with David becoming lieutenant governor, those programs are staying in the state. He builds upon them. He helps us farmers that really need help not staying in the same path that we've always gone on, because we're seeing that that's not working for us. We need to be able to use value added to keep our farms in business. And I think that David will really help us do that as lieutenant governor. And I love his program of thinking outside of the box and not just being here during when they're in session, but when they're not in session, and going out and visiting everybody and trying to figure this whole thing out.
But one of the things I want to talk about is what Dave mentioned about setting up a task force to make sure that ideas are brought in from around the state of Vermont, because I think that as a legislator, one of the most important things I could do, or Dave could do, or any of us could do, is to make sure that the voices of citizens are heard in the State House. There's a lot of people do a lot of talking in this building, but we don't hear enough from citizens who are actually the people who can best tell their own stories. And we've seen that happen time and time again, whether it's the work we've done on trying to expand services for kids with autism, or on-farm slaughtering, any range of issues. What we've seen is that the best legislation is legislation that comes from citizens around the state, and the easiest way to pass legislation is to make sure those voices are heard. And I would just say, as I always say, that the best ideas for Vermont do not necessarily start in this building. The best ideas for Vermont start around kitchen tables and in town halls and church basements around the state of Vermont, where Vermonters get together to talk about what's important to them. And I think, as Dave mentioned, the Lieutenant Governor's office provides a lot of time and ability for the right person to get around the state and not to gather, I don't say generate, but to gather those ideas from Vermonters, to bring those ideas back into the State House. And I think Dave is very, very well suited to do that with his organizing background. So I think that's the most important thing a lieutenant governor could do, but I think it's the most important thing any legislator could do. And I really do believe that if we want to move Vermont forward, whether it's agriculture or the rural economy or other issues, the way to do it is to make sure that citizens' voices are heard outside the building and then brought loud and clear inside the building. And I look forward to Dave doing that as lieutenant governor.
Any questions about what we're talking about here today? Or we summed it
If
up
we've
so
all
well
said it
for
all,
you
that's
that-
what.
Nicely, but why not run for governor? I guess just point blank. Why, or
Sure.
in general, why lieutenant governor again?
Well, actually, lieutenant governor, I think, suits the role that I've played as a legislator very, very well. I've always operated with one foot in the building and one foot outside the building, organizing and getting people involved in the process. As lieutenant governor, you really can do that in a way that you can't as a legislator, or can't as much, because actually you don't serve on those committees in the morning and the afternoon. I also do run a business, and as you all saw with Phil Scott running for governor, it's a lot of juggling to make sure your business can keep going, and we're still growing our business. I've got a 10-year-old daughter, and the juggle is important. But the opportunity of lieutenant governor to really organize important issues, bring them into the State House, get more people involved in the political process is a pretty unique opportunity, and I look forward to that opportunity.
This session in many ways saw sort of the death of the big ideas that were up for consideration, and you were a champion of some of these ideas, divestment and marijuana legalization. So has this past session taught you any lessons about how maybe to get more support for these issues in the future, or have they made
Sure.
you disheartened about getting these sorts of big ideas passed?
Actually, I think that the cannabis reform loss was a perfect example of where we didn't have enough voices from the community engaged in the process. I think many members of the House didn't really understand how many community members out there supported this legislation, partly because people were afraid to speak up because of the stigma, and partly, that conversation just wasn't really happening with as many constituents out there. Some of the other issues I've worked on in the past that have come to fruition have had a broader citizen engagement in that discussion. And that's why, as Lieutenant Governor, I think issues like that one and others can move along better if we have more, me in the role of Lieutenant Governor and others drawing more citizens into the State House and into the process.
So what could you or the House members have done differently this past session that you think would have changed in terms of bringing people into the process?
Well, certainly as Lieutenant Governor, I would have had more time to go to some of those districts or some of the counties where we needed to generate earlier support and make sure that we could help bring people out of the woodworks and into the process. And it's a two-step process. One is bringing what's happening into the building out to the community, because I think a lot of folks assumed this is just going to pass. It's a no-brainer. People all over the state are familiar with what's going on with cannabis and alcohol and so forth, but they didn't realize that the building was not ready for it. And so as Lieutenant Governor, I could travel out and say to folks, you need to engage more if you support this, because right now they're not hearing from you. So as a spokesperson for the whole state and as someone who can speak from the building and go out to the communities, those are some of the things that I could do.
So how much will marijuana be part of your strategy for helping to support rural Vermont and farming?
Well, I think it's a whole combination of things. I mean, this group right here spoke a lot about the various agricultural economy that we have, from dairy to diverse produce farms. We've got an incredible forestry sector that we can continue to build and thrive, particularly with value-added products. And like I said, broadband is incredibly important to that rural economy opportunity as well. Cannabis is another opportunity. I think it was a missed opportunity in this building, and I think it's one that can be both rural as well as some of the more urban areas. There's opportunities in some of the manufacturing facilities, because those are also used for some of the production opportunities.
What can you do as Lieutenant Governor on cell service and broadband?
Well, you did talk about cannabis. I do think they're tied in. The cannabis industry is an opportunity to have more resources for the state. If you have an underground economy that comes into the economy, you have tax revenue that you can use to invest in broadband. If we have cannabis, we have 200,000 more skier visits. That's $80 million of economic activity. That's both jobs in all the different ski areas, which are typically rural working people, but also we have revenue from that in sales taxes and other ways. So if we had the revenue to invest in the infrastructure, that's where we could put that money.
Is there a candidate for governor in either party that you don't think you could work with as Lieutenant Governor, or are you confident that no matter who's elected, even if it's a Republican, you can sort of work effectively there?
Well, I've actually served in the State House with all four candidates who are running right now. And I have...
Bruce Listman, baby. You forgot Bruce Listman.
You're right. I've served in the State House with all four candidates who have actually served in office. Maybe I could put it that way for you.
Sure.
And certainly have a great deal of respect for any of them. There are those for whom my policies are more closely aligned. And I would hope in this election we would actually elect one of the Democrats that are running in terms of policy positions that are closer to mine. But in terms of being able to work with people, we've seen numerous administrations working, cross-partisan lines, because that's what Vermonters do. And if you look at the group I've put together, and Enid Wanacott couldn't be here today, but Clark Hinsdale, former president of the Farm Bureau, Anthony Polina, former head of rural Vermont, Enid Wanacott, head of NOFA Vermont. Sometimes folks would say, how would you ever get those three people to be supportive of you or the common issues? And that's what Vermont is. We can come together. And I think that's something that I've displayed in a range of issues that I've worked on. And so working with any of the gubernatorial candidates ultimately is certainly within reason.
If you're elected, can you imagine, after 2 years, how would Vermont look different as a result of you being in office?
Well, I would say a couple different things. One is many of the issues I've worked on are long-term thinking. Because frankly, sometimes when we only do short-term thinking, we make quick, rash decisions, or we do Band-Aid solutions that don't actually pay off in the long run. And if you actually think about it with more long-term investment strategy, we're going to be a stronger state for some of the issues I've worked on. Obviously, if I'm elected, you brought up cannabis. I think that's an issue that'll come back forward, and that may well be passed in the next couple of years. That would then lead us to have many of the resources that were talked about in terms of farm viability, rural internet investment, various programs like those that with more money can serve more Vermont farms and Vermont rural businesses to expand and create those jobs.
How's the fundraising going?
It's great. Yeah, we've got the resources we need to run a really strong campaign. And, you know, I think so far all pistons are firing. I've gotten a great response all over the state. Places that I go across the state, folks already know me from my past work, which I think is a real sort of bonus for me relative to some of my opponents. And, you know, so far the reception's been wonderful. Thank you.